Hi guys, and welcome to the Is It Worth It for the Jagdtiger 88, the Tier 8 German premium tank destroyer. This tank is actually not going to be around very much longer. At the time of making this video, it's only going to be available from the tech tree for a short time. It's available for 10,000 gold from the tech tree, but it's going to be disappearing as soon as 9.10 is released, which should be in a few days. Once 9.10 is released, it's no longer going to be available from the tech tree, but it will be available from the gift shop for another 10 days or so. But time is running out to get your hands on this tank. So starting with the history, the Jagdtiger 88 is a variant of the Jagdtiger, the current Tier 9 in-game. The Jagdtiger was built towards the end of World War II in mid-1944. It was the heaviest tank to ever see combat during World War II, but unfortunately it wasn't very reliable. We'll get into that in a moment. But the Jagdtiger was a project to mount a 128mm gun on either a Panther or a Tiger chassis. The Panther chassis wasn't strong enough. They opted for the Tiger, and then they had another choice: what suspension to use on the tank. So the first 10 tanks to actually roll off the production line were fitted with the suspension from the Tiger P, whereas the later 70 tanks that came off the production line actually used the Tiger H suspension, or rather a variant of that suspension. It was the same suspension used on the Tiger II, but there were two basically different types of Jagdtiger, both based on suspension, but 80 were built overall from about mid-1944 till about mid-1945. However, coming towards the end of the war, due to an availability of extra chassis but a shortage of 128mm guns, a project was mounted to fit a 88 or the long 88 onto the Jagdtiger. The project was a success. 20 Jagdtiger 88s were built. However, as I say, their combat history isn't very successful. To give an example of just how unreliable the Jagdtigers or the Jagdtiger 88s were, towards the end of World War II, there was a Tiger ace known as Otto Carius. He was given command of a company of Jagdtigers. He had 10 Jagdtigers under his command. In just one engagement, the 10 Jagdtigers managed to destroy one American tank for one Jagdtiger lost in combat. However, a second Jagdtiger was lost to friendly fire, and the remaining 8 Jagdtigers were lost to breakdown or had to be destroyed or sabotaged by their crews due to basically engine problems or lack of fuel, and to prevent their capture by the Allies. So it wasn't a very successful design. Now, I usually like to compare premium tanks against all their premium tank rivals. Unfortunately, the Jagdtiger 88 at the moment is the only Tier 8 premium tank destroyer in the game. However, I do happen to have some other Tier 8 tank destroyers, and I'm going to do a side-by-side comparison. And we're going to be comparing the Jagdtiger 88 against its cousin, the Ferdinand, another very heavy assault gun for the Germans, the German Jagdpanther II, the British AT-15, a very similar tank in a lot of ways to the Jagdtiger 88, the Russian ISU-152 and SU-101, and at the end we've got the Borsig, another Tier 8 German tank destroyer. But this is a turreted tank destroyer. It's also got next to no armor, so that's why I've shoved it over here at the end, because it's pretty much unlike any of the other tanks up here. Starting with the hit points, we've got a positive because the Jagdtiger 88 gets a very good 1300 hit points. That's significantly better than any of the other Tier 8 tank destroyers up here, with the exception of the AT-15, which comes in at 1450. But 1300 hit points is definitely a positive for the tank. A negative, however, is the fact it weighs over 70 tons. As I say, it was the heaviest tank that saw combat during World War II. 70 tons is significantly heavier than any of the other tanks up here. The only one that comes even close is the Ferdinand. Ferdinand's about 3 tons lighter. It's quite surprising that the AT-15 and the Jagdtiger have such a disparity when it comes to weight, because the AT-15 is a whole 10 tons lighter, even though it's a very similar tank, well armored forward facing TD that doesn't have a lot of speed. And speaking of speed, the engine power is on paper average. I mean, it gets a 700 horsepower engine. It's got the second best engine of any of the tanks up here. Only the Ferdinand has it beaten at 840. However, Because it's the heaviest tank, its engine power actually means it's got the worst horsepower to weight ratio of any of the tank destroyers up here. The horsepower to weight ratio is terrible on this tank, and horsepower to weight ratio affects how the tank handles. It means it doesn't accelerate particularly well, and its top speed on paper does not look great. It looks okay, but it doesn't look great. 28 kilometers an hour. Now, that is okay, but when put into context, it's the second slowest tank destroyer up here. Only the AT-15 is better, or is slower, I should say, at 20 kilometers an hour. But you got to remember, the AT-15 has a 650 horsepower engine, so it's got less engine power, but it also weighs 10 tons less, so the horsepower to weight ratio is better, and the AT-15 can actually reach 20 kilometers an hour a lot quicker than the Jagdtiger can actually reach 28 kilometers an hour. Now, the in-game Jagdtiger at tier 9 has 38 kilometers an hour. I don't know whether that's historically accurate or whether it's for game balancing, but yeah, this tank at tier lower, even though technically it's the same tank, is 10 kilometers slower than the tier 9 Jagdtiger. It's not a quick tank. As I say, it's the second slowest tank up here to the AT-15, and the traverse speed is not great either. When we look at the traverse speed on paper, it looks okay. I mean, it's slightly better than the Ferdinand, it's slightly better than the AT-15, it's slightly better than the ISU-152, but it's significantly worse than the other three tanks. However, remember the whole poor horsepower to weight ratio? Poor horsepower to weight ratio means the acceleration and the traverse speed are affected much more. This tank does not turn very well at all, and even though on paper it looks pretty average as regards traverse speed, I would say traverse speed is a big negative on this tank. However, we do have a positive when it comes to armor. 250 millimeters of frontal armor on paper means it is definitely the best armored tank up here. The AT-15 is a really well armored tank destroyer, but that is significantly worse than the Jagdtiger 88. Even the Ferdinand, its cousin, gets 50 millimeters less frontal armor. So when it comes to frontal armor, the tank definitely has a positive. The side armor is not great at 80 millimeters. It's similar to the Ferdy, both on the side and rear. It's significantly better than the Jagdpanther 2, but the AT-15, even the ISU-152, SU-101 have it beaten with 90 millimeters of side armor. So side armor and rear armor aren't great on the tank. The gun traverse is pretty average as well. You could see that 26 degrees per second gun traverse is very similar to all the other tanks. In fact, only the Borsix is slower and only the SU-101s is quicker. However, it does have a very narrow gun arc, so maybe the gun traverse speed doesn't matter quite so much. The view range is definitely a positive for this tank. It gets the best view range of any of the tier 8 tank destroyers up here at 390 meters. That's very good, and when you boost that with coated optics or with binocs, this tank actually does have very good view range, and the signal range again is also very good. In fact, only the AT-15 has it beaten at 750 meters, so very good view range, very good signal range. Two positives for the tank. So popping into Tanks GG to have a closer look at the gun on this tank and any other hidden stats. It comes with the 88mm Pak 43 L71, which is basically the same gun as comes on the in-game Tiger and Tiger P. It's a pretty good gun on those tanks at tier 7, and it's actually not a bad gun on this tank at tier 8 either. The DPM is very good. It comes in at 2780 DPM, although you can boost that with equipment and cruise skills. So DPM on the tank is very good. The tank gets special matchmaking, another positive I failed to mention before now. So it will only see tier 8s and tier 9s. So the penetration is actually okay. 203 millimeters of penetration can struggle against some tier 8s, it can struggle against some tier 9s, but the gun is accurate enough to be able to hit weak spots. You can see that the accuracy is 0.3. Extremely good accuracy, although to be honest, I don't think it's that accurate, but I do think the accuracy is very good on the gun. So 203 millimeters of penetration means you can hit weak spots, you can pen higher tiered tanks if you know what you're doing. You don't have to fire that much premium in the tank, and that means it's a pretty good moneymaker. The damage comes in at 240. Now that's pretty standard for, in fact it's probably quite poor for a tier 8 tank destroyer, but you've got to remember you've got incredible DPM. Even though the damage doesn't seem particularly high, down to the fact you've got a huge rate of fire. You've got 11.6 rounds a minute rate of fire with a reload of just over 5 seconds. So this tank can pump out shots very, very quickly, and if those shots can hit, if they can pen, you may not be doing amazing alpha damage, but you're doing a lot of damage. It builds up pretty quickly. The shell velocity is quite good at 1,000 meters per second, and you get quite a lot of ammo at 68 rounds, so you don't find yourself running out of ammo very much. The aim time is very, very good at 1.9, and as mentioned, the accuracy on paper is very, very good as well at 0.3. Another thing that quite surprised me about the Jagdtiger 88 was the gun dispersion, or the accuracy after moving the tank. The gun dispersion on the Jagdtiger 88 is actually better than it is on the AT-15. Now, I wouldn't have said that because I love the AT-15. I really, really do enjoy playing the AT-15, but apparently on paper the gun dispersion is better on the Jagdtiger 88, but personally, I didn't find it that way. The max gun depression is 7 degrees. Now, that's okay. It's not great, but it's okay. It does mean that you can use it as a hill warrior slightly. You can get your gun on target, but sometimes it's a little bit difficult. And one of the problems with having 7 degrees of gun depression is occasionally, in order to get your gun on target, you've got to expose your hull or your lower glacis, and doing that is a big problem in the Jagdtiger 88. We're going to get into that in a moment. As I say, the top speed is nothing special at 28 kilometers an hour, and due to the fact you've got a poor horsepower to weight ratio, you're going to have problems reaching that top speed, and the reverse speed isn't very good either. It's only got 12 kilometers an hour, so you're not going to be reversing away from enemy tanks. You're not going to be going anywhere quick in this tank. Once you get into position, it's going to be very, very hard to relocate. The terrain resistance, however, is quite good. It's a little bit weird. On hard terrain, the Jagdtiger 88 has actually got better terrain resistance than the Tier 9. However, on medium terrain, the Tier 9 has better ground resistance. So terrain resistance is actually okay. Not fantastic, not bad. Other positives and negatives. The view range is, as mentioned, very, very good at 390 meters. Definitely a positive. However, a negative is the chance of fire. This tank does go on fire a lot, and the fact that tanks to the front, or shots to the front of your tank, can actually damage your engine means that you are going to have to be investing quite a lot of money in repair kits and fire extinguishers. The shell cost, however, is a positive for the tank. It comes in at 252 credits a shot. That is very, very cheap for a Tier 8 premium tank. So you're going to be firing a lot of AP. The gun is good enough to fire AP. You don't have to fire a lot of gold. The AP you do fire is very, very cheap, and it means that you're going to be earning a lot of credits in the Jagdtiger 88 compared to some other Tier 8 premium tanks. Taking a closer look at the armor, you can see that the weakest armor on the front of this tank is definitely the hull. The lower glacis is only about 180 millimeters thick. Now, that seems okay. That does seem okay against lower tier tanks. Lower tier tanks might have problems penning your lower glacis. However, in practice, the lower glacis doesn't even seem to be that good. Most tanks that shoot my lower glacis seem to have absolutely no problems penning it. But it does, on paper, have 181 millimeters. But as I say, just try and keep that lower glacis hidden even when you're top tier and playing lower tier tanks, because lower tier tanks seem to have absolutely no problems penning the lower glacis. The upper glacis is okay again against lower tier tanks. Against similar tier, higher tier tanks, it's only got about 200 millimeters of effective armor, so a tank like the T-34 is just going to go straight through the top of this tank. And on top of that, a lot of players resort to gold. This tank gets so much gold fired at it, probably almost as much as my mouse did. But yeah, it's only got 200 millimeters of effective armor on the upper hull, and yeah, this tank's going to be facing Tier 9, so they're going to pretty much go through the upper hull on a Jagdtiger with absolutely no problems. Now, even if you do go hull down, even if you do manage to hide its lower glacis, another major weak spot on front of the tank is this huge machine gun port, which, as you can see, ranges from 123 millimeters up to about 150 millimeters. So if you do find yourself in front of one of these tanks, try and get out of its way as quickly as possible, because it's got an awesome gun. But if you do need to engage one of these tanks frontally and it's got its lower glacis hidden, just go for the machine gun port. Easy pen. You're going to be doing a lot of damage. You're going to be killing a lot of crew members with shots through here. However, the major strength of the Jagdtiger is its upper glacis, or the upper hull, which is a huge 250 millimeters of armor. It's actually more effective because there is slight sloping going on, not much, but there is some slight sloping. And you'll notice there's no weak spot, there's no commander's cupola up here. Zero commander's cupola, which is kind of surprising because the view range is so good, but there is no weak spot on top of this tank. So if this tank is able to go hull down, then you're going to have a hard time digging it out if you can't flank it. 250 millimeters of effective armor. That's one of the reasons a lot of players switch to gold when they face these tanks, and as I say, a lot of tier 9s are going to be able to pen the upper glacis as well. The gun mantlet is incredibly troll, as you could see, 560, 570. The gun mantlet, very, very good on this tank, rising up to 700, 600 millimeters in places. So the gun mantlet, incredibly well armored. The upper glacis, or upper hull, incredibly well armored, and no weak spots. So yeah, this tank, if it gets into a position, if it gets an opportunity to get into a strong hull down position where it's safe from arty, it can be devastating. However, it's not all good news. The hull, as I say, is not great. The lower glacis is definitely a weak spot on this tank. The side armor is absolutely dreadful. You've only got about 80 millimeters of effective side armor. That means that arty is able to hit and penetrate you, at least higher tier arties. Remember, you're going to be seeing tier 8 and tier 9 arties in this tank. So side armor, definitely a weakness. Pretty much every single tank that this Jagdtiger 88 faces is going to be able to penetrate it from the side. Big tank, big weak spot. The back of the tank is incredibly poorly armored as well. The back of the turret is only 80 millimeters. Back of the tank is only about 100 millimeters of effective armor. So yeah, the rear of the tank, if you can get to the side, if you can get to the rear, and it's not difficult to get to the side and rear of a Jagdtiger 88. The armor is absolutely pathetic. And one of the reasons RT loves shooting these tanks is because they're big, they're slow, and even if the shell doesn't hit or hits the side and fails to penetrate, there's a good chance it's going to hit on the roof. And the roof of this tank is only 40 millimeters thick. So again, if RT can land a shot on top of a Jagdtiger 88, it's going to penetrate, it's going to do full damage, and your 1300 hit points aren't going to count for very much. This tank can be one hit killed by RT. So to sum up, the Jagdtiger 88 is not a particularly quick tank. It accelerates poorly, it's got poor traverse, it's got weak spots. The upper hull can be penetrated very easily by similar or higher tier tanks. It has a huge machine gun port, which is a big weak spot, and the lower glacis doesn't seem to work. Most tanks seem to be able to pen the lower glacis. However, if you can go hull down, you can hide the hull. The upper structure of the tank is incredibly well armored. There are no weak spots, no commander's cupolas. It can be very good. The side armor is absolutely terrible. The rear armor is absolutely terrible. The roof armor is absolutely terrible. As I say, poor acceleration, poor traverse, but it has incredibly good view range, and the gun is very good. Alright guys, let's see this gun and this engine in action. We are here on Swamp. It is a tier 9 game, only 3 tier 9s on the enemy team. 1 RT in play, and I never like seeing RT on the enemy team when I'm on a big open map in the Jagdtiger 88, but we're accelerating, and you could see we're briefly going downhill, got up to 28 kilometers an hour, but now going uphill our speed slows down again. So this is not a quick tank, even though on paper the speed is 28 kilometers an hour. You're very rarely going to reach that. We're doing 20 kilometers an hour up here. We just don't have the engine power. It makes the tank extremely inflexible. Can't get into position early, can't get out of position early. You can see, and I'm playing this with a very good crew. In fact, I retrained, I took repairs off my driver, and I put clutch braking on just to try and improve the traverse speed of this tank, because the traverse speed is not very good. So what you're seeing in this game is the tank performing even better than it would with a regular crew. With a crew that's less than 100%, the tank is so much worse. With a crew that doesn't have multiple skills, the tank is so much worse. This has got a very good crew, so you're seeing the tank at its absolute optimum here. But we finally got into a position. I'm knocking down some trees just to try and create some camo for myself. Always a dangerous thing to do with RT in play, but just pushing forward. My sixth sense hasn't gone off yet. Just knocking down trees. And there we go. Someone has seen the trees fall. So I decide, oh, okay, someone across the way. Hint of a shot on the SP1C. Aiming. Nah, he's going to get into cover. So you see, the aim time is not too bad. But in the meantime, if you look at the mini-map, we're down a tank already. We've lost one of our tier 9s already. Not a good start to the game. And I've got to get over here because the enemy team have gotten up into the castle before our team have. And most of our team facing them seem to be tier 7s and tier 8s. And they're being flanked, so we're just moving up. We're going to try and use our gun. We're going to use our DPM. You're going to see the raw DPM here. But we've just lost our Type 64. So I decide I'll fall back a little bit. Try and support the tanks up in the north. Okay, T20, go for a track shot. Track him in place. Look at this rate of fire. So the alpha damage, not fantastic for a tank destroyer, but the rate of fire is fantastic. Here we go, we're reloaded. Jagdtiger. So when you're in a position, you can do damage in this tank. You can get the damage out very, very quickly. So Jagdtiger's turned around to face us. He's fired. So I pop back up, he's fired. And it's going to be difficult to pen a Jagdtiger, but look, I'm aiming for his machine gun port. And we'll get another shot in. So we've just done 1300 damage against mostly against a tier 9. And we're just moving up. We're going to try and support, but look how quickly our team are dying here. Our team are just collapsing. We've lost all our, well, 2 of our tier 9s already. But Tiger has just appeared. And the thing is, this tank is just not quick enough to relocate, so this flank is about to collapse. I'm trying to support Tiger. As I say, the armor is effective against lower tier tanks. So we go for track shots, go for engine shots, set him on fire, need one more, get him. T30 has moved up, but he's behind cover. So just tanks, there we go, we've lost the flank, and now we track a Tiger 2 in the open, we can track him. I've been spotted. Someone else takes him out, I fall back, and there we go. 2 huge hits, I'll show you those in a moment. Miss a shot in the IS, but we get absolutely hammered. As soon as you get shot through the lower glacis, there goes all my health. So we've taken actually 3 hits. Took 3 hits in a row there through the lower glacis. All my health is gone, and you can see my engine is damaged. So shots through the lower glacis are going to take out your engine. So now I'm definitely not going to be running anywhere. Go for a blind shot, but this is the problem. I've got a damaged engine. I'm now on low health. Enemy tanks, no problem shooting your lower glacis. We're on 3k damage. Can pen an IS-8, no problems with this gun from that angle. But, you know, as long as we're hull down, we can bounce. We've just bounced the IS-8, a tier 9 tank with a very good gun. But this is it. I can't run away. I've got a damaged engine, although I've just put it back. I'm on low hit points. I go to reverse. These tanks need to come up and get me. But I'm keeping an eye on the mini-map. I'm pretty much stuck here. As long as they don't flank me, I'm okay. But the problem with the Jagdtiger 88 is it can be flanked. So, miss a shot on the upper Glara on the cupola, and yeah, I've just been flanked. So there we go, it's game over. The tank is just not quick enough, the tank is just not fast enough, maneuverable enough to be able to get away. It's got a great gun. We've done 3.2k damage, it's got a great gun, but when your team basically collapses in front of you, it's a very situational tank. But what you can see is when you go hull down, it's quite a good tank. When you expose your lower glacis, you get absolutely destroyed, and shots through the lower glacis destroy or kill your engine. It's just not quick enough to maneuver out of a bad situation. But the gun is good enough to damage tier 8s. The gun is good enough to damage tier 9s. And as I say, 3.2k damage in about 4 minutes was pretty good. So this is a screen I had to get used to looking at when I was playing games for this review. I just found the tank too situational and not able to readjust when your team was too good or your team was too bad. But on the other hand, the gun is great. It's a very good gun. 3,227 damage done in about 4 minutes of gameplay. I was able to damage tier 9s, I was able to hit weak spots, able to snipe the machine gun port on a tier 9 Jagdtiger. didn't have to fire any premium, so the gun, very, very good. I mean, top on damage in a tier 9 game, I can't complain. I wish some of our other tanks had actually been able to stay alive and do something, but I mean, the gun is good. 19 shots fired, 14 hits. Now, I did take a couple of snapshots, but the damage is great. You can see that it's even over distance. At a distance of more than 1,000 or 300 meters, we did over 1,000 damage. The view range is good, but we damaged 5, destroyed 2, and we even managed to do 1,000 assistance damage as well. And even though that was a defeat, we still earned 73,000 credits with a premium account. So no win bonus here, no win bonus at all, no heroic medals. This is just a bad game in the tank, but you can see you can still earn money. And look at this, 19 shots fired, and my ammo costs only came to almost 5k credits. So it's a very good money maker. So let's talk about equipment. Now, there aren't that many equipment choices for the Jagdtiger 88, but there are a lot of viable ones, starting off with the super heavy spall liner. This is the super heavy spall liner. If you've watched my equipment guide, you'll know that this is the best of the spall liners because this is a super heavy tank. It gives up to 50% to armor protection, which, as I explained during the guide, doesn't actually give you 50% armor protection. It just reduces the hit point damage you take from ramming or splash explosions, but does not help from direct penetrations from HE. However, the major benefit is 50% to protection of the crew from injuries. You're going to be losing a lot of modules. You're going to be losing a lot of crew through HE splash damage because RT loves targeting Jagdtiger 88s. Now, this is not going to help you from a direct hit from RT if it pens, but it is going to help you if the shot doesn't pen or if it just splashes you. So a super heavy spall liner. There were times yesterday during my play session with the tank I wished I'd had a super heavy spall liner on it. Improved vents are definitely a viable piece of equipment. I know a lot of players who would prefer to use other pieces of equipment other than vents. However, I just find the traverse speed and the maneuverability and acceleration of this tank just too poor. Vents helps that by 2%, so 2% is better than nothing. I went for vents, but you might choose another piece of equipment. A wet ammo rack is viable, but I don't recommend it because this gun has a very, very good rate of fire. The tank has very, very good DPM, very good rate of fire. Even if you get ammo racked, I think there are better pieces of equipment, and the rate of fire, you're still going to have decent DPM. You're still going to be able to put out shots even if your ammo rack has been damaged. A toolbox is 100% viable on this tank if you don't have a repair crew on it. This tank, I should admit, I'm going to be talking about crew in a moment, but this tank, it's an absolute disgrace. It's so bad if you don't have a 100% crew with multiple skills in here. Now, I usually use my premium tanks to train up new crews. A lot of my crews who have played in the Jagdtiger 88 have been 75% or up to 100% without any skills, and it's been absolutely miserable. Getting tracked in this tank without a toolbox and without a repair crew is absolute hell. So if you don't have a fully trained crew or don't have a very experienced crew who have the repair skill, then I do recommend a toolbox, at least till you get a repair skill on your crew. A large caliber gun rammer, absolute must, definitely viable, plus 10% to DPM. It's going to take your DPM over 3,000. The DPM on this tank is very, very good, increasing up at 10%. Just can't beat a gun rammer. Moving on, filling the tanks with CO2 is viable. This tank has a 20% chance of fire. Don't know if I've mentioned that already. This tank does tend to go on fire, and it's got a very big engine. Shots to the front of your tank are going to damage your engine, even though German tanks aren't supposed to have that happen to them anymore. But yeah, you can go on fire quite easily in this tank. So filling your tanks with CO2 is viable, but I think there are better pieces of equipment. Enhanced torsion bars, complete and utter waste of time on this tank, simply because other pieces of equipment are much more important. Enhanced gun laying drive. Yeah, I know some players who might like to have an enhanced gun laying drive on the tank. I don't recommend one. I think the aim time of 1.9 seconds is very, very good. I don't think the gun needs enhanced gun laying drive, and I think there are better pieces of equipment. Coated optics are also viable if you tend to play this like a heavy tank. If you tend to keep it on the move near the front line, then coated optics are possibly a good choice for the tank. They're going to take your view range up to about 430 meters. However, I go for binocs because it takes me up to 536. Now, this tank, if it's being played aggressively, it's usually being played aggressively on a city map. or it's being played aggressively where you're in close contact with enemy tanks and the view range doesn't matter so much. But there are times where you've got to play the tank passively, and more view range is always better when you do have to play it passively. I've gone for binocs over coated optics, but the choice is up to you. Camo net I don't think is worth putting on the tank at all. This tank has extremely poor camo rating, forgot to mention that so far. So yeah, camo rating definitely not worth putting, or camo net definitely not worth putting on the tank. There are much better pieces of equipment. But as per usual, the choice is up to you. So let's talk about crew, and as you can see, the Jagdtiger 88 has a huge crew. It has 6 crew members. It's got a commander, a gunner, a driver, a radio operator, and 2 loaders. Now what that means for you is basically German tank destroyers. There are 2 tank destroyer lines all the way up to tier 10. Now the lower tank destroyers, they're not going to match the crew. Now you are going to be able to train up lower tank destroyers in the Jagdtiger 88 simply because the crew is so big. So for example, the Jagdpanzer 4 only has 4 crew members, so you're going to be missing a radio operator, you're going to be missing a loader. But what it does is it means that if you're training up lower tier crews, you're buying the Jagdtiger 88 as a crew trainer. If you're training up lower tier crews, you're going to be training up spare crew members in here for a time when they're going to go into a tank it matches. But lots and lots, I mean, that's the tier 5, yeah, that's the tier 6, sorry. 1 tier 6, 4 crew members. If we take a look at the Nashorn, again, we've got 5 crew members in the Nashorn, so the lower tier tanks don't match. Even some of the mid-tier tanks don't match. So for example, if we take a look at the Jagdpanther 2, you could train up the entire Jagdpanther 2 crew in here, but we're going to be missing a loader. For the Ferdi, it matches perfectly, so it is a good crew trainer from the Ferdi. So from the Ferdi up, even the Borsig actually doesn't match either. You've only got 4 crew members for the Borsig. So for the lower tier, mid-tier German tank destroyers, it's a perfect crew trainer. You're going to be able to train up the entire crew in a Jagdtiger 88, but you're going to have spare crew members from somewhere. However, once you get to the higher tiers, once you get to the higher tier TDs from the Ferdi up, so the Ferdi matches perfectly, the Jagdtiger obviously matches perfectly, the Jagdpanzer E100 matches perfectly, same crew layout for the first line of German TDs. Second line of German TDs also matches perfectly from the Waffenträger Panzer IV and the Waffenträger Panzer E1 or Waffenträger Aufwini E100. Getting tongue-tied here. So it's a very good crew trainer for the later tier German tank destroyers. So yep, you could train up every single German TD crew in the Jagdtiger 88 from low tier to high tier. You might need some extra crew members, but that's not bad because it means when you do get to the higher tiers, those crew members are going to be ready to slot into the tank. So as a crew trainer, I think it's pretty much perfect. Okay folks, time for the overview game, a game where I show you as many strengths and weaknesses of whatever tank I'm reviewing in one replay. We are here on Westfield. It's a tier 8 game, so I'm top tier, and I like to play my tank destroyers a little bit aggressively, which is one of the reasons why I found the Jagdtiger 88 a little bit frustrating to play. It's a heavy tank, it's well armored, it's got a great gun. Top tier, I should be able to play it in the front lines. So I'm planning to work the B line. There is one RT in play, but I think this replay sums up all the strengths and weaknesses and good things and frustrations about this tank in one. So just moving forward, haven't been spotted yet, Sixth Sense hasn't gone off yet. So we're just moving up, and I can use this ridge here to go hull down. And I've just been spotted, so IS, I'm hull down. Gonna go for the track shot, and there's RT. Okay, so the moment I get spotted, RT. I'm already being targeted by RT. I've just lost my commander. Failed to track, didn't have the alpha damage to track the IS-3, but the IS-3 bounced on my upper hull, and there we go, we've just bounced an E25, spamming gold. So when you go hull down, the tank can be very good, but oh, there we go, I've just been shot by an E25 again. So I'm taking blind shots to where I think he is, but you'll notice he's knocked out my engine. Yep, he's hit me again. He's having no problems penning me from this angle, firing premium from the top of the hill. And my engine's dead. Okay, so finally someone spotted him. There is an IS-6 to my right, but I need to focus on this E25. Okay, so E25, look at that, shot after shot after shot down into my lower glacis, even though he was firing from a higher elevation, and that meant that the angle on my lower glacis was even better than it should be straight on. He was still able to pen me, and he was still able to take out my engine. Every time you get shot through the lower glacis, it takes out your engine. It's just so frustrating because the tank is so slow and unmaneuverable in the first place. So this E25, you can see sometimes the accuracy is going to let you down. That shot didn't even reach the target. I've just been spotted again, so I know the E25 is still up there. And I'm just trying to move. Okay, here we go. No, no, no. IS-6 is moving up. Bounce on the flat area of his turret, but look at the rate of fire. Look at the rate of fire. I missed my track shot. He's retreating. He didn't keep coming, but rate of fire. Okay, we've got him. We've got him. He doesn't have a repair kit. He doesn't have the gun depression. And we could just use this amazing DPM, this amazing rate of fire. So it's got a great gun. Really, the rate of fire and the DPM on the gun is fantastic. We're able to tear the IS-6 apart. And we're just spinning around. We're going to work on these levas, so 2 levas. So this tank has 7 degrees of gun depression. I've already had to use a first aid kit to fix my commander. I've already had to use a repair kit to fix my engine. You can see hull down, the tank is great. And levas, I mean 7 degrees of gun depression. We could start going to work here. We're hull down. RT isn't focused on me for once, that's good. Now it's a little bit dangerous because now I'm going to have to expose my lower glacis, staying at a slight angle. But look at this rate of fire. We can track the leva. They're not focused on me. We can just keep going to work here. Keeping this guy locked in place once again. The rate of fire, just good. Get another shot in. Ram finishes him off. I'm platooned with Ram and Brinji, by the way. But there we go. I mean, you've got great. We're up to 2.6k damage, but we lost our engine. We lost our commander. And now the game is ending. E25 is relocated. Okay, so we're pushing forward. Not very many tanks left on the enemy team. There goes another one. The Jagdtiger's gone down. And this is where the tank is just so frustrating because it's so slow, so unmaneuverable. Look at the Super Pershing is faster than a Jagdtiger 88, by the way, guys. Ram and I had a race at the beginning of a game, and the Super Pershing is actually faster than the Jagdtiger 88. But you just can't keep up. 2 tanks left on the enemy team, and this tank, I'm just so far behind. IS-6 is faster than I am. Tiger P is faster. Everyone is faster. We do have decent view range, but here we go. Sometimes the gun at long range lets you down. The shot goes high. It's a great gun. That shot went where I aimed, but the tank was moving. We go for a couple of blind shots, but Brinji takes out the Super Pershing. But yeah, I mean, the DPM on the tank is great, but it gets targeted by RT. It's a huge target. Shots to the lower glacis take out your engine. HE splash damage take out your crew members. It's got good gun depression, good DPM, but at the end of games you just can't keep up with the action. If your team are too aggressive or your team are too good, this tank is not a lot of fun to play. So I didn't pick up any ace tankers during the play session for this review, but as I say, I don't play the tank very much because I just don't like playing it. But that was a very, very average game, I would say. I would say that was fairly average damage. I didn't come top. Actually, our T-37 had a really, really good game, but we did almost 3k damage, so a couple of my blind shots went in on the E25, so almost 3k damage again. Finished up with 1021 XP, and look at this. I mean, no premium needed, and we made a profit of 84, almost 85,000 credits. It's a very, very good money maker. It's a very, very good gun, although it did let me down there. A couple of long range shots missed, but it can deal out the damage. It's got a fantastic rate of fire. You can track enemy tanks and keep them tracked with that rate of fire. You can get a lot of assistance damage, although I didn't get that much in the game. The view range on the tank is good. We actually managed to spot 1, damage 5, destroy 1, but as I say, the main thing here is the credit earning. It's a very good crew trainer, very good credit earner. Okay folks, time to sum up. Should this tank still be available from the tech tree or the gift shop at the time you're watching this video, or should Wargaming make this tank available in future? Is it worth 10,000 gold? Well, there's a lot to like about this tank, surprisingly. I was quite surprised because I don't play this tank very much, and the only reason you're getting this review now is because it's been removed from the game. But the tank has exceptionally good view range, very, very good view range. That really surprised me. It's got the best view range of any of the tier 8 tank destroyers in my garage. When you boost that with equipment, the view range can be very good on this tank. The signal range is also very good. It's an exceptionally good credit earner because the ammo is so cheap and because the gun is so accurate. You can hit and damage weak spots. You can hit and damage tanks with this gun without having to fire very much premium. So it's a very good moneymaker. And then as a crew trainer, it is exceptionally good. You could train up every single German tank destroyer crew in the game. You're going to need extra crew members for some of the low tier or mid tier ones, but once you get to higher tiers, you should have those crew members ready to go into higher tier tanks. So it's an exceptionally good crew trainer, especially if you've got higher tier German TDs. The crews match perfectly. Probably the biggest positive for this tank has to be its matchmaking. It gets special matchmaking, which is one of the reasons it's been removed from the store. So it will never see a tier 10s. It's tier 8 that will see tier 9s at most. And when it only sees tier 9s, it makes the gun even better because 202mm of penetration and 0.3 accuracy means you're going to be able to penetrate most of the tanks you're going to be facing. And if you are having trouble penetrating them, you should be able to aim for weak spots with the gun. So yeah, it's got good matchmaking, it's got a very good gun, it's a good credit maker, it's a good crew trainer. And it's also got exceptionally good armor from the front. When you go hull down in this tank, the upper hull or the upper not the upper glacis, but the upper hull structure here is 250mm or more depending on the angle. Exceptionally good hull or upper armor. The gun mantlet, incredibly good. The gun mantlet pretty much can't be penned by any tank that's shooting it. Gun mantlet, very good, and it's also very big. It covers most of the front of the tank. So from the upper glacis up, the upper hull of this tank is extremely good when you manage to get hull down. And the 7 degrees of compression, not fantastic, but it's not bad. It's pretty good. So you can use this thing on hills. You go use it going hull down. The upper glacis is positive, I suppose, against lower tier tanks. So you got about 200mm of effective armor on your upper glacis. That's really only going to be effective against lower tier tanks or if you're angled slightly. However, yeah, most tanks or a lot of tier 8s, a lot of tier 9s are going to have no problems penning your upper glacis, but it can be good against as I say, lower tier tanks. Just remember you've got a weak spot here, which is a negative. You've got a big weak spot, so even if tanks are having problems penning you, if you've hidden your lower glacis and go hull down, enemy tanks can pen you through your machine gun port. But yeah, the top of the tank, other than the machine gun port, the top of this tank, no commander's ports, no cupolas, there's no weak spots here. But that's the positives. Now the negatives. As I say, the upper glacis can be penned by similar or higher tier tanks, so you've got to hide your upper glacis as well when you're not top tier. But the lower glacis is one of the things that makes this tank almost unplayable for me. The lower glacis is incredibly flat. There is some angling, but you know, again, according to the paper stats, it's about 170mm thick. I get penned by tanks through the lower glacis all the time. It doesn't matter if they're higher tier or lower tier. Incredibly weak lower glacis. And not only is the lower glacis incredibly weak, this tank has incredibly poor maneuverability. It's got very poor horsepower to weight ratio, so it's not fast, it doesn't accelerate well, and its traverse speed is terribly bad. And when you combine that with a weak lower glacis where shots damage your engine, yes, shots through your lower glacis knock out your engine, probably about 1 out of every 2 games where you don't manage to hide it and you get shot here. Lower glacis shots are going to knock out your engine, and that makes the tank even less maneuverable. It makes the traverse even worse. It makes the acceleration so much worse. It's such a pain in the butt to play this tank with a damaged engine. Not fun at all. And as I say, shots through the lower glacis, you're going to take out your engine. On top of that, it's got a 20% chance of fire. So I've been set on fire through shots through the lower glacis. That's not supposed to happen anymore. That used to happen on German tanks, but a few patches ago, they supposedly fixed that. But yesterday, during my play session, I was set on fire with a shot through the lower glacis. So yeah, it can be set on fire. There's a 20% chance every time the engine engine gets hit, it can go on fire. So yeah, the tank is very, very unmaneuverable. It is it's got very, very poor traverse speed. It's got a very, very narrow gun arc as well, so sometimes it can be quite hard to keep a moving target within your aiming sights. It's got terrible, terrible side armor. It's got terrible rear armor. It's got terrible roof armor, and it's a huge target. It is an absolutely huge tank. And when you take into consideration the fact that it's got absolutely zero camo rating as a result, when this tank gets spotted, it tends to get killed. And not only does it tend to get spotted and get killed, Arty absolutely wrecks this tank. Arty, whenever they have an opportunity, are going to go for a Jagdtiger 88 because they know if they can hit a Jagdtiger 88, there's a very, very good chance they're going to pen and do full damage and potentially one-hit kill it. If they don't hit you or don't manage to pen your shot, then they hit you with splash damage, and again, splash damage knocks out so many crew members, so many modules of this tank. It's unbelievable. So when a Jagdtiger 88 is spotted on a big open map with Arty on it, it's pretty much going to be a poor game. Bad camo rating, huge target, very, very susceptible to Arty because it's so slow moving. And because it's so slow moving, it's also incredibly, incredibly frustrating because it is completely reliant on the matchmaker. If your team are too good, the Jagdtiger 88's just not quick enough to keep up with the action. All the enemies are going to be dead before you get there. If you play passively at the beginning and your team are too good, the whole game is going to pass you by. If you play passively and your team aren't particularly strong, you might find yourself facing 5 or 6 enemy tanks at the same time. The Jagdtiger can handle itself one-on-one against enemy tanks, but as soon as it's outnumbered, it's just slow speed and slow traverse really, really do let the tank down. So it's a very, very situational tank that's very, very dependent on how good or bad your team is. On top of that, it's map dependent. It's very, very situational because it depends on the map. If it gets a big open map, Arty is going to absolutely cause you misery, assuming there's Arty on the enemy team. As soon as Arty spots a Jagdtiger 88, yep, they're going to aim for you because you're in a Jagdtiger 88. If it's a city map, then this tank can be very, very good because you don't have to worry about Arty. You can deal with tanks head on and you can go hull down. So it's very team dependent, it's very map dependent, and it just makes it a very, very inconsistent tank because I want to like this tank. I love heavily armored tank destroyers. The AT-15 is one of my favorite tanks in the game, and yet I hate the Jagdtiger 88 with a passion. It's just too slow. It's too unmaneuverable, and I love the AT-15, and I'm saying that about the Jagdtiger. And the main reason I'm saying that is because this is bigger, it's a bigger target, and that lower glacis just gets, the engine just keeps getting knocked out. So at least it's on paper, this tank has better armor frontally than the AT-15, but the AT-15 has armor all over the front. This thing, the thickest armor is only on the upper hull. In addition, the engine doesn't get knocked out when it gets shot from the front, unlike the Jagdtiger 88. I really did want to like this tank, guys, but it's just so inconsistent. You go from having one good game to having 3 terrible games, depending on your team, depending on the map. Then you might have another good game, but Arty's involved, and just as you're getting into the game, Arty decides to end it for you. You can go hull down. I mean, it's a one-trick pony. It's a very easy tank to play because all you do is you drive forward, you go hull down, you hide your lower glacis, and you just start shooting. So it's a very, very easy tank for new players to play. But the thing is, you go hull down, you find yourself a nice position, and then enemy tanks can either flank you or Arty's just going to end you if you try and go hull down in a big open map. Yeah, it's just a very frustrating tank. It's not good for your win rate. It's not good for your stats if that's what you're into. On the other hand, if you want a premium tank to train up crews and make money, which is the main two main reasons you'd buy a premium tank, the Jagdtiger 88 does both of those things exceptionally well. Fantastic crew trainer, fantastic money maker, but it's just not a lot of fun to play. It's a one-trick pony, very, very situational, very, very inconsistent, very, very difficult to have good games. I don't like the speed. I don't like to traverse. I don't like the fact it's map dependent. I don't like the fact it's very, very team dependent, but I do love the gun. And as I say, when you get into that dream position where there's no Arty and you manage to go hull down, I think the tank can be incredibly good. but the opportunity to do that happens so rarely. I really can't recommend the tank, guys. The only reason you'd want a Jagdtiger 88 is to if you're a tank collector. There's no other reason you'd want this tank. If you want to play a good German premium tank, there are two on the way. There are two tanks coming in to replace the Jagdtiger 88. The first one is the Kanonen Jagdpanzer. That's coming in. Again, I haven't played the tank, haven't reviewed it, but looking at it, it looks okay. It looks far less situational than the Jagdtiger 88. Probably the complete opposite, whereas this is slow but well armoured. Situationally, the Kanonen Jagdpanzer is fast and not very well armoured. And then there's also the Rheinmetall Scorpion that's being introduced sometime in the future. So there are now going to be two new German Tier 8 tank destroyers being introduced into the game. And I would much rather play those two, even though I haven't played them or seen them yet, than the Jagdtiger 88. So there are other options. If you miss out on this tank, guys, don't worry. There are going to be other options coming to the game very soon. When they do, I'll happily play and review them for you. But I don't think the Jagdtiger's an 88's a good tank. I really can't recommend it. Like I say, the only reason you'd want this tank is if you're a tank collector, but I do think there are better German premium tanks on the way. At least they look better on paper. I'll review them as soon as we get them. But that's pretty much it. I can't recommend this tank, guys. It's expensive. Not as expensive as some other Tier 8 premiums, but it is pretty expensive. It is very situational. It is a frustrating tank to play. It can have amazing games, but they're just too and far between for me to recommend the tank. I don't like the tank. I think there are going to be better options in future, and that's pretty much it. I don't think it's worth it, guys. It's going to be rare. Maybe that's another reason to get your hands on it. It's going to become much rarer, but I don't think it's worth it. I think it's better off waiting, save your money, use it on some of the new tank destroyers coming into the game. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.